and welcome to Women's World. In this edition, we look closely at counseling and care of survivors of family and sexual violence. We look at how trauma from violence can affect a person and the importance of counseling. We speak with Ume Wainetti from the Family Action Violence Committee, as well as clinical psychologist Dr Amie Frewan.
If the trauma happened when the child was 3 years old, it can stay with the child, even as an adult, unless the person receives counseling. And that's what many of us don't seem to recognize. We tend to think that we can overcome it and live normal life. There are women who talked about problems when they were as small children, raped, and didn't have normal marriages because of the fear of sex. And it's like, you know, it's really unfortunate. Sometimes our culture, because of the way we have been brought up, even girls are encouraged, are made to marry rapists. Or you are the one who's taken her virginity, you have to marry her, even if he's already got a wife or a girlfriend. He's not in love with this young girl, but he's raped her. So the family now insists that he should marry her. And so it adds to, you know, to the young woman's trauma of living with a man who's raped her. My name is Ume Wainetti, and I am the National Program Coordinator for Family Sexual Violence Action Committee. So the committee is made up of both government agencies, non-government agencies, international NGOs, and also the private sector. We also have committees established throughout the country. So every province have a provincial FSVAC. 10 years ago, when you look back even 5 years ago, we didn't have services at all. For me to now look back to see that in health facilities we have family support centers, a police department is establishing family sexual violence units. We have safe houses. We have even communities that are coming up with safe houses in their communities. We have private sector that is taking active part now in making sure that family violence is addressed. We have government now passing the GESI policy to make sure that there is gender equity and social inclusiveness. These are things we didn't see 5, 6, 7 years ago. We have made progress, but we still have a lot of work to do. Counseling is important for anybody who's experienced any type of trauma. Sometimes, even as a child, it can be in you, and it's best that you talk to somebody to help you to work out your own issues, to come to terms with what problems you have so that you can live a normal life. Because sometimes when we ignore the pains that we have gone through, it makes you not have a happy life. Like you tend to take out your own issues out on other people. You don't want to progress with your own life, or you tend to hold on to other people too because you have your own issues that you have not looked at. What counselors do in counseling is help you to address the issues that you have and deal with them so that you can have a normal life. Not forget them, but you learn to cope with what problems you have. So that's what counseling do. And most times in this country, we did not take counseling seriously.
My name is Dr Amie Frewan. I'm a clinical psychologist by training. which means as a clinical psychologist, I'm trained to work with the people who have the most severe issues around mental health. I've come to PNG nearly 2 years ago working mostly as a consultant, doing mostly training. So clinical psychologists in Australia particularly work mostly in hospitals alongside doctors. I guess the only difference is with psychologists and doctors is that we don't prescribe any medication. So obviously this qualification doesn't exist in PNG exactly, but you find quite a number of psychologists working here in the aid world, or like myself in the universities, doing training and education. Since I've come to PNG, I've done a number of training with police and with lawyers around how to do child witness statements, but generally speaking doing counselling and awareness and education, doing some support work with the Family Support Centre, so the first line workers who help people who come with when they've recently been involved in an incident. So helping the support staff in their training to help victims or survivors better. And also the work moving forward is really exciting for PNG, and that involves developing of the curriculum for counsellors. So moving forward, PNG you can have a legitimate career in counselling in PNG. So that's a project that will start next year. It's also in its infancy, but it's something that could attract a lot of people that doesn't already exist in PNG, and it's an opportunity for people to give back to their community. It's a very rewarding profession.
Welcome back to Women's World, as we look at counselling and care of survivors of family and sexual violence. In this segment, we look at the PNG Counsellors Association. We speak to President Susan Satae, who tells us more about the development of counsellors in PNG. We also look at counselling via the hotline called One Talk Kauselin Helpim line, where you can get free counselling via a phone call. Since its establishment, this counselling hotline has received over 2,000 calls. Half of the callers are men.
When we were addressing violent issue, we were addressing it. We're advocating for peaceful solution to violence, but then we recognized that the people who were really affected by the violence were not getting the psychological help, not getting the counseling they needed to help them to overcome the kind of violence they have been going through all their lives maybe. And so we need to provide that service in order to address what GBV is doing, is to raise awareness against violence, stop violence, but the people affected by violence needed psychological help through counseling. My name is Susan Satae. I am with Papua New Guinea Counsellors Association. This is an organization that is serving the needs of the counsellors. Many of our bare feet counsellors, meaning that these are people who have voluntarily taken up counseling to help the needs of our people in the villages and in the communities in towns. We have already, I think the first need we have identified is to do training, conduct training for our counsellors who are providing counseling. We see the need that they need to have training that will help them to get a certification and accreditation, because we realize that in our discussions and in our observing of the counseling services that are being provided, our counsellors' lives are at risk. To help our counsellors, so we are in the process of setting up a counseling school, so that we have certificate school counseling training and also diploma
up to degree and PhD level. So that's a process, and we have 10-year plan that we are working on to get those training in place.
It's probably best to consider counselling as a process. It's an opportunity for people to get help with their problems. Counselling has existed since the start of time, since humans have been interacting. It is perfectly natural to seek the support from your friends or from family or maybe an elder or religious person. So that process, that's also counselling as well in a form. But professional counselling is somebody who can create a safe space for you to help you to understand the problems. It's best to consider it a process because typically problems don't start overnight, so the solutions take a little while to get to. And this is a professional counsellor is somebody who can listen really intently to what you have to say and keep everything that you're saying confidential and give you an opportunity to work through your issues and not push any particular agenda in some ways that your friends or family might want to do. So in that process it can be helpful over a number of sessions just to have that space to talk through the things that you want to talk to and come to your own decisions about where you want to move forward. Children need to be protected from all forms of violence particularly. A child's brain actually is almost completely formed by the age of 5. So your first 1,000 days is extremely important to the child's development. And if they experience any trauma within those first 1,000 days or the first sort of 5 years, that can have lasting impacts on their ability to learn, just literally how the brain forms and develops, their ability to make friends, their confidence, their ability to trust others. So the effects on children can be very wide-reaching. And that doesn't matter if it's a boy or a girl. Of course, that's the same with teenagers and women or men who are the victims of violence too. There's a lot of shame that can be associated with being a survivor, and it's that feeling of shame that can sit with you, and your thoughts make you feel like you've done something wrong or you're to blame. And when you tell yourself those thoughts enough times, that can lead you to feeling very down about yourself, and that can lead to problems in depression and anxiety, the sorts of mental health issues that we would treat as a clinical psychologist. And that's and if without treatment, that can stay with you for a very long time.
The counselling helpim line, the hotline came about. There was need for us to have people to call in because we don't have counselling services in the country, and not many people know where to go for help. And also we needed a confidential way to get women to come out and seek help. And so the idea of the counselling hotline came about because of that. Sometimes people don't come, they don't want to do face-to-face. They'd rather talk on the phone to somebody who's not seen their face. And so the hotline came about so that we could encourage people to call in and seek services, or call in and just talk about their own problems to the counselor on the line. And so to date now, we have received over 2,000 since the hotline came into being. We've received over 2,000 phone calls, and even surprisingly, half of the people calling are men, calling for help, because we have this that men should not be asking for help, but men are calling for help. This is a way they call and talk to somebody.
City Mission is one organization that has been dealing with survivors of family and sexual violence. One of its key roles is providing counseling from a holistic approach. Reverend Ronald Brown, the CEO of City Mission, tells us that counseling involves a more deeper healing. Thus, it is considered as vital for a person to live a normal life.
When survivors of gender-based violence come into our facilities, we go to try to help them in terms of bringing hope. We see ourselves from the standpoint of counseling and how we impact people's lives. City Mission is an emergency room, a triage center for those that have been injured and hurt and disadvantaged and in many different ways. My name is Reverend Ronald Brown, and I am the CEO for City Mission. And City Mission is an organization that has been around for about 24 years. And one of the areas that we are active in meeting needs in the community is working with women and children and in some cases men who have been victims of gender-based violence, offering them a place to come, a place to receive counseling, and a place to hopefully receive help and hope. We are, in terms of the values and the priorities that we place on what we do, from everything from meeting physical needs to meeting social needs or emotional needs, is from a Christian standpoint. We're a non-denominational, interdenominational Christian work, so that is a strong component in everything we do. Gender-based violence is oftentimes, from a world perspective, is looked at being only physical violence. But verbal abuse is a huge component in that. And yes, maybe they don't lay a hand, maybe there's never a bruise that occurs, but it's that verbal abuse, telling a partner or telling a woman that she's worth nothing, or a daughter for that matter. We're seeing more and more of that happen, that's occurring too. And that's a huge component in taking a woman or a young girl down a pathway where they feel like they're worth nothing. We have seen where that has ended up in a young girl ending up in a life of prostitution. Because it's not just a phenomenon of Papua New Guinea, it happens around the world. If you get abused enough and told enough that you are worth nothing, then that's how you begin to believe that to be true. And as a result, if I sell my body in prostitution, it's because I'm worth nothing. Or I only have value in that. And that robs this nation as well as other nations around the world of the potential of, in particular, young women to really impact a society and a culture and a world when they are diminished to a perspective that I am only worth what I can sell my body for. So that verbal abuse has a huge impact on them, and that's something we address in our counseling. What we see on the surface is only, like I said, is only a small part of what's really happened. There's been much deeper emotional trauma that has occurred that may have been occurring for years and years and years, before anything physical occurred. And so we focus very strongly on a counseling system that brings about an internal healing. Our philosophy in all of that is that it takes some time for that. Like it would for any deep physical trauma, it takes time for rehabilitation and full healing. Even more so for that occurs into somebody's spirit or soul. And so we realize in doing that we have to, our program of counseling and meeting somebody's need has a long-term approach to it. It's why City Mission, across the spectrum of everything that we do, incorporates also accommodation and the ability to try to transplant people into a different environment, take them out of that place where the injury occurred and put them into an environment that is healing, as well as provide the spiritual support and the counseling support, as well as the medical and the legal and all of those other factors. So, that's a key value for us, is get them out, get that person that's been injured out of that environment and give them a safe place to heal.
Thank you for watching this special edition of Women's World, highlighting gender-based violence prevention and response in Papua New Guinea. Coming up in this special season, we share more about the legal and policy environment, men as champions of change, economic empowerment, empowering youth and adolescents, and many more. If you have a story to contribute, feel free to get in contact with us at womensworld@mtv.com.pg. You can watch this edition again on MTV Online. It is also available for your listening on FM 100. We look forward to you joining us again here on Women's World. Until next time, take care.